Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be talking to you about dream work and how to derive deeper meaning from your dreams. Alright, so in this video I'm going to be talking to you about dream work, and basically what dream work is where we record and interpret our dreams to find the deeper meanings that are there. So it's where we look at all of the symbols in the dreams as well as the emotions that are coming up in the dreams, and we start to figure out what meaning that our dream is trying to convey that we might not yet be aware of in our waking life. Now, I really enjoy dream work, and I think it's a great addition to any kind of consciousness work practice, but I especially like it for shadow work. And the reason why is because basically the dreams give us kind of access to what's going on in the unconscious. And oftentimes it's the case that parts of ourself that we've repressed often come up in these dreams. Now, the conscious mind and the unconscious mind are basically in two totally different formats. So I like to think about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind as being almost like two totally different programs on a computer. So let's say that the conscious mind is like Microsoft Word and the unconscious mind is like Photoshop. Well, ultimately, if you try to open up a Photoshop document in Microsoft Word, what you're going to do is you're just going to get some kind of error code. And the same way the same thing is true with the opposite. If you tried to open up a Microsoft Word document in Photoshop, it's not going to work out. So we have to create a medium through which these two things can communicate, and dreams functionally act as that medium. So that way, when the unconscious mind creates the dream, the conscious mind can take in and remember that dream and start to piece into it with its own logical, linear, narrative, visual functions and figure out what's going on with the dream. So ultimately, dreams are a medium of communication between the unconscious and the conscious mind. And this is why it's so helpful as a practice to engage with dream work, because ultimately it enables us as the conscious mind to get to the deeper wisdom that the unconscious knows that we may not consciously know yet in our waking life. So I like to think about the unconscious mind kind of like it's the invisible man. It's something that we can't see with the naked eye, but then if we like throw a bucket of paint on the invisible man, now we can start to see the invisible man moving around because we have a medium. And so basically dreams are like that bucket of paint. Dreams are that medium, and symbols become part of that medium as well, which enables us to make sense of that which doesn't make sense to the rational mind. And the reason why this is so helpful is that basically we can get kind of the low-hanging fruit of what's ready to be integrated within our shadow work process. So whatever our dream is offering up to us is indicating something that's ready to be integrated, something that's ready to be made conscious. Now, one of the things that the unconscious mind tends to do is it internalizes different people, places, and things from our life and uses them as masks through which to communicate with us in the dream. So for example, like let's say that I had a friend of mine back in high school. Well, my unconscious mind has internalized that person as a symbol and as a mask that it can wear in the dream. So let's say that this friend of mine was really a carefree person, right? And let's say that that's something that I've repressed. So I have the aspect of me that's more carefree in the shadow, and then I have this friend who is, let's say, maybe kind of an example of someone who would be carefree. Well, ultimately what's going to happen is my unconscious mind is going to internalize that person's face or that person's image as a mask and as a symbol, and then it might, in the context of a dream, show me parts of myself that I've repressed in the form of that person showing up in the dream. So when that person shows up in the dream, it actually represents the part of me that's carefree, that maybe this person is the most proximal symbol for in my day-to-day life. But it isn't just people that the unconscious mind internalizes as symbols and as masks for it to wear in the context of the dream. Ultimately, it will also do that with places and objects as well. So for example, if I happen to have repressed a part of myself that back when I was in middle school, because I experienced some kind of trauma or I made some kind of decision about my identity and I said I'm like this and I'm not like that, ultimately that symbol of my middle school might be engaged with in the dream, and it's a kind of mask that the parts of myself that I repressed back then are utilizing to come and communicate to me within the context of the dream. Or let's say that my Dad gave me a pocket watch, and now that pocket watch in some ways symbolizes him and might also represent the parts of myself that I've repressed that I would see as most proximal to my dad. So the unconscious mind is always internalizing symbols for our environment. So it's important to keep this in mind as we're paying attention to our dreams, because ultimately a lot of personal symbols come up that are a stand-in for parts of ourselves. So with all that in mind, let me go ahead and get into the process now. And I'll go ahead and I'll show it up right here on the screen. All right, so with that in mind, I want to go ahead and share with you the process that I use for dream work. Now, it isn't my own process. It's something that I learned from a guy named Will Sharon. Now, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he's got a great channel, and I'll go ahead and I'll link that down below in the description box if you want to check it out. He's got tons and tons and tons of videos about dreams. Also, some of this is also inspired by some things that I've learned from the author Jean Raffa, who is a really great Jungian author. I highly recommend her as well. So basically, what the first step in the process is to, of course, begin recording your dreams. You want to start keeping a dream journal. I recommend keeping a handwritten journal like right next to you when you sleep, or if you want to keep it, let's say, on a Word document on the computer, that works too. But ultimately, you want to be recording them as close to when you have the dream as you possibly can. That way you don't forget about it. I know there's been plenty of experiences that I've had where I have a really interesting dream and I think, oh, I'm going to remember this, and then 2 hours later I've totally forgotten about it. So make sure that you keep track of your dreams. And with this step in the process, what you want to do is you want to write it down in the first person present perspective. So the first person present perspective is to say, like, let's say if I had a dream where I was walking down a hallway and then I saw my best friend Cecilia in the side room, and then she said something to me, or I went in there and I went and talked to her. Let's say that that was my dream. Well, I want to write it, instead of saying I walked down the hallway, I saw my friend in the side room and then we were talking together. Ultimately, I want to write it as though it's happening right then in the first person present perspective. So I want to say I am walking down the hallway. I see my friend in the side room. We begin having a conversation. So just as though it's happening right now. And the reason why you want to write it down in the first person present perspective is that as you read it, you almost become back in the point of view of the dreamer, like you were in the dream. So that way you're kind of re-engaging the perspective and feelings that you were in the dream, and this helps you connect more deeply to the contents of the dream. Now, the second step in this process is to select a dream that you would like to look into and to be able to divide it into 3 sections. So you want a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so with that, let's say if I have this dream where I'm walking down the hallway, I see my friend Cecilia in the side room, and then I have a discussion with her. Ultimately, if this is my dream, I want to divide it up into a beginning, middle, and end. So maybe the beginning is I am walking down the hallway. Maybe the middle part is that I see my friend in the room, and then the end part is we're having a discussion together. So that would be my beginning, middle, and end. And once I get that step completed, I want to go on to the next step, which is to find the emotional arc of the dream. So if I have my beginning, middle, and end here, ultimately, I want to look to each of those sections of the dream, and I want to ask myself with the beginning, what's the main overriding emotion that I was experiencing in this part of the dream? So with the beginning part of the dream, let's say when I'm walking down the hallway, maybe I feel an emotion like nervousness or apprehension. So I'll go with apprehension. So I want to pick one emotion there. So I have apprehension. And then let's say when I hear my friend Cecilia in the other room, maybe I feel startled. So now I have apprehension and startled. And then when at the end part, let's say where we have a discussion, maybe it's something like relief or connection. Yeah, so connection we'll go with. So we have apprehension, startled, and then connection. And so that's my emotional arc. And so from there, I want to see if this emotional arc, and this is the next step, I want to see if this emotional arc has come up anywhere recently in my life or any other time in my memory in my life. Now, sometimes it's the case that this emotional arc will be something that you can spot from your own life. Other times it's more reflective of internal dynamics. So let's say if I said, okay, I had apprehension, startled, and connection come up the other day while I was at work. I felt really, really nervous about this and apprehensive about this project that we were doing, and I felt like something negative was going to happen, but then I ended up connecting with my coworkers on something, and I felt a sense of relief there. So let's say that that's like a recent event that happened in my life. Ultimately, I might be able to then kind of get the sense that this dream might be reflective of something happening in that situation, even though the situation in the dream is very, very different in many ways from the actual thing happening in life. But if we can connect something that's happening in our day-to-day life with something that's happening emotionally for us in the dream, it can give us a hint that the dream might be about that thing. Now, it could be, again, the sense that the emotional arc hasn't come up recently and it might not have to do with that. But it does give you another viewpoint through which to look at the dream. Now, once you're done with the emotional arc and kind of seeing if it's shown up anytime in your dreams, you'll move on to the next few steps. And the next few steps have to do with being able to kind of parse into the different symbols that come up in the dreams. And a symbol can be anything that's like a character, a place, or a setting, or a character, a setting, or an object, rather. And so ultimately, any character, setting, and object within the dream can be a symbol. And again, oftentimes our unconscious will internalize these things from the outside as masks for parts of ourself, or they could be internalized to represent something else that doesn't directly relate back to what they are in life, or they could relate back to directly what they are in life as well. So like, let's say if my dad comes up in the dream, maybe he really is a representation of my dad, and it has to do with my own feelings about a situation with my dad. So that could totally be the case. Now, with these next few steps, we want to start from the more personal symbols, and we want to move to the more collective and archetypal symbols. So with the first of these three symbolic steps is you want to look at the people, places, and objects that you recognize from life. And so basically, let's say in this case, I recognize my friend Cecilia from life. And so I want to get my own personal associations with her. So when I think about my friend Cecilia, I think about somebody who is determined, I think about somebody who's intelligent, and I think about somebody who doesn't take any crap. Like, those are the things that I kind of think about when I think about her. And so basically, if those are my associations, I want to write those down, because then I can start to cross-reference those with the meanings that I derive from the other symbols. Or let's say that the hallway that I'm walking down in this dream is familiar to me. Like, let's say it is the hallway in my mom's house. Well, ultimately, I want to be able to say what my associations are with that hallway. And so ultimately, it was my childhood home, and I used to be afraid of that hallway. I remember if I were to wake up scared in the middle of the night, I'd have to walk down that hallway to go to my parents' room, and there was something like that was really unnerving about it. And so there is a lot of fear associated with that hallway, and so I would write down that as my association. Whereas if it's a random hallway, what I would want to do is I would want to wait to the next step over. And so basically, once I get all of my personal symbols and my personal associations with them, so that's people, places, and objects that I recognize from life and what all of my associations are there, I want to go to the next step over, symbolically speaking. And to look at the symbols that are more arbitrary, but to get my personal associations with those more arbitrary symbols. So for example, if it's a random hallway, I want to think about, oh, what did this hallway make me feel? What are my more personal associations with the hallways? What are my thoughts about hallways in general? Or if there's like a painting on the wall, let's say the painting on the wall has a cat on it, like, okay, well, what are my personal associations with paintings? What are my personal associations with cats? And so maybe if I go with the cat example, it's like, okay, well, when I think about cats, I think about like being graceful. They're also like my go-to pet. So I've had a lot of cats in my life, and so basically, like, those are like my personal associations with that, with that non-personal symbol. And then once I get my personal associations out of the way, I want to start looking to the more collective and archetypal interpretations of the symbols and the dreams. So basically, archetypes are instinctual forms of knowing. They're common forms to humanity that can be seen across all cultures and all eras. And so when it comes to, let's say, something of an archetype, it's not our personal associations, but it's the general associations that people would have have. So if, for example, if I look at this dream and then I have this hallway, let's say in there, if I think about, okay, what are the general collective associations with hallways? Well, I often think about hallways, let's say in a collective sense, as like it's a pathway to somewhere else. So there are usually lots of other rooms that you can get to via a hallway. So I think about, rites of passage when it comes to hallways. I think about something that brings you from one place to another. And so that's like maybe the general kind of archetype there. Or I could think about it, let's say, apprehension and fear generally has a sort of kind of archetypal sense. Like it's the sense I'm bracing myself for something scary around the corner, which is a common experience to human beings across all eras and all cultures. And so there could be something also archetypal about that. And so you want to write down all of your personal associations and all of your collective archetypal associations. You can even look into any type of like kind of Jungian style, like, dream interpretations, or dream symbol dictionaries and things like that. You also want to be kind of like careful of like what sources you look to. Some aren't really based in archetypes, and so you might find some resources that are like, oh, what do hallways mean? And they're like, oh, that means good luck is coming for you. So don't go with those types of things. So you want to find some good resources for determining the collective meaning of dream symbols that are really based off of an understanding of archetypes. And then once you have all of these symbols, what you want to do is you want to see if there's any connections that you could make intuitively between these different symbols, as well as if your dream arc, your emotional arc in the dream showed up in life. So if I'm looking through the viewpoint of, let's say, here I am at work and I'm experiencing this uncomfortable situation, and then it was okay and I experienced connection, it's like I want to look at like, okay, in what ways does, let's say the symbol of the hallway, have to do with that? All of my personal associations with hallways are that this is like a really scary place, but maybe archetypally the hallway has to do with some kind of like rite of passage or something like that. And so what ways could I take my personal meanings and the collective meaning and start to connect them to my situation at work, and what might be happening there? Like, so am I going through some kind of rite of passage at work? Am I actually, let's say, experiencing some kind of transition, and I'm experiencing the discomfort maybe associated with, let's say, the hallway from my childhood home, but but ultimately it's met there with a sense of connection at the end. Somebody, my friend Cecilia and I, like, we were friends in middle school and high school especially, and so it's like, oh, is there some kind of like connection that I can get through going through this struggle at work? So I want to start drawing different intuitive connection points between all of these different symbols to see if new meanings arise. And then after you work through all of these symbols and you start to see some meanings arise from that, what you want to do is you want to determine what the dream message is, and to like basically boil it down from 1 to 3 sentences. So you want to keep it very concise, and you want to keep it to where it's not like tons and tons of information. So you want to, as pointedly as possible, be able to see what the dream is trying to communicate to you. And so that's the overall process for dream work. So with this hypothetical dream example that I've been using, what I might come to the conclusion of in terms of what the dream message is that, right now things are very stressful at work, and there's a feeling of like maybe being all alone in the dark, like maybe I was in that hallway like when I was a kid, but that ultimately if I, let's say, go through to the end of things, that ultimately I can try to seek connection, maybe with my coworkers or with other people. And through having that deeper sense of social support, that maybe these kind of situations at work might become easier. Now, of course, that explanation is quite long-winded in and of itself, so I'd probably want to concise it down to, like, let's say, while I'm experiencing apprehension at work, I should maybe seek to connect with my coworkers and to develop a support system so that I don't feel so alone. So that's basically the dream work process. Now, if you want to go in and you want to explore your dream symbols more deeply, I highly recommend the process of active imagination. And this is something that I did a video on a few years back, so you can check on the channel if you want to learn more about active imagination. But active imagination is basically where we re-engage certain symbols that arise during a dream, and we kind of have a fictitious conversation or interaction with those symbols. So, for example, if I were going to go into this dream that I mentioned where there's the hallway and my friend Cecilia, what I might do is I might go back into, using visualization, I might go back into the dream setting and actually ask my friend Cecilia as a character, different questions that I would have about, oh, okay, why is she in the dream? Or, what does she represent? Or, any other question that I feel would be relevant and help me get deeper information for the context of the dream. Or I could even explore the hallway more deeply. Maybe I go into a different room in the hallway and I kind of imagine myself interacting with different facets of the dream that I didn't interact with. And so basically with active imagination, what we're doing is we're trusting that our imagination, because it comes from the same mind that produced the dream, is going to be able to provide us more context about that dream, more information. And so basically in these visualizations, I tend to imagine myself back in the setting, and then from there I ask the questions, and then basically I just kind of trust whatever my imagination brings up to me as the answer, even if the answer doesn't make very much sense. So if I ask my friend Cecilia in the context of the dream, like, oh, what do you represent? And she says something random like orange sherbet, I'm going to go ahead and I'll write down orange sherbet, and I'm going to work into that later and figure out what that means. So a big part of active imagination is trusting the process and trusting that it's going to bring up something that's valuable. And so if you would like to try active imagination, I recommend coming up with a few questions that you would like to ask your dream characters, or, to come up with a few things that you would like to explore about certain dream settings or dream objects, and then ultimately just engaging in the visualization and interacting with your dream that way. But of course, if you want to learn more, do check out my video. Now, one of the best practices when it comes to dream work is to consistently write down your dreams every time you remember a dream. Even if it's something that's a small snippet, you can get a lot of information from it. And ultimately, it enables you to kind of see what the overall dream arc is. So basically, dreams are kind of almost like an internal movie that the unconscious creates for the conscious mind. And then we can think about the dream movie as being like one component, one scene in a larger movie. So for example, if I keep having a recurring symbol come up where I'm in hotels in a lot of my dreams, what I want to do is I want to write down all of my dreams, and then I can go back and I can look at all of the dreams that I've had in the context of a hotel, and then see if there are any similarities between those dreams, or see if there's any ways that the storyline kind of connects. And from there, I can start to see if there's any kind of progression in things over time. So let's say maybe in the earlier dreams where I was in a hotel, maybe there was some kind of distress or some kind of issue, but later on the issues don't come up as much. It might kind of indicate some kind of resolution relative to what the symbol of a hotel represents to me. Or if the same character keeps popping up in my dream and my relationship to them is changing over time, I want to figure out what that person symbolizes and what it means about that general progression of my relation to what that symbol represents. So recording your dreams every night is very, very helpful for being able to dive even deeper into your dreams. And ultimately, exploring dreams this way can be incredibly rich. It basically gives you connection to the wisdom of the unconscious. And oftentimes the unconscious knows so much more than we consciously know about things. The unconscious isn't very rational or logical or linear, but oftentimes it just takes in the full complexity of everything that is. And so we can at the deeper level know things before we consciously know them. And so the process of dream work, the practice of dream work, can be very, very valuable for helping you come to understand and know yourself at deeper levels. And it's an invaluable tool for something like shadow work. Anyway, so that's all I have for you for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead, click the like button below and subscribe and leave me a comment down below. You can also share any dreams that you would like to share, and I might actually go in the comments and kind of give my take on, what my interpretation of the different symbols that come up are, for a few people. And so go ahead and leave your comment down below. And yeah, and if you would like to learn about shadow work, I have a free shadow integration masterclass called the 6 Simple Steps to Shadow Integration. And you can check that out by going to shadowintegration.org/masterclass. Anyway, so that's all I have for you for now. And until next time, keep becoming more you.